Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today to talk about Windows Autopatch. So, what is Windows Autopatch? Autopatch is a service that covers Microsoft 365 apps, Microsoft Edge, Microsoft Teams, and Microsoft Windows, bringing benefits to the organization such as productivity, the adoption of new features, security, and of overall operational value by reducing your IT administrator's time on updates. So, how does it do it? Using telemetry data that it tracks from the service, it will craft rollout sequences to reduce disruption across your estate. Now, Microsoft aims to have 95% of Windows quality updates out on devices within 21 days. Update 99% of eligible devices to the latest feature update, and also patch 90% of Microsoft 365 apps on the monthly enterprise channel. Now, alluding to the operational improvements, you can see why enabling Autopatch can really benefit your organization in terms of managing these key update areas. Now, obviously, as with anything in the cloud world, there is licenses required. So you will need a Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 license, or a Windows 10, 11 Enterprise E3, E5 or VDA license to access this service. Your devices must be set to either MDM or co-management to be eligible to be enrolled into the service, and it also must be a corporately owned device, as bring your own devices and personal enrollments will be blocked during the registration of the device into the Autopatch service. Autopatch has some pretty cool features, such as if you're, for example, there's a critical update that needs to be on devices, it may choose to expedite that update. And if there are any issues during release, it may also decide to pause the update and even roll back. It's a very smart service. Without further ado, let's get into looking at enrolling your tenant into Autopatch. So first of all, head over to the Intune portal, click on Tenant Administration, and if you have the appropriate licenses, you will see the Windows Autopatch Tenant Enrollment. If you select Tenant Enrollment, read over the notice on the screen. If you agree, select the box and click Agree. So let's have a look at the readiness tool. So as you can see, my tenant is not ready. Now, I purposely left something assigned in here just to see if it would pick it up. So let's click View Details. And you can see update rings for Windows 10 or later. So what's my problem? You have an update ring for Windows 10 or later that targets all users, all devices. Now, this is only here for test purposes, just for demonstrations of this video. So let's head over to that ring in another tab and change it. Okay, so if I go to devices, update rings, and if we look here again, it tells you which profile. So it's my production ring that's assigned to all devices. Okay. If I click in here, click on properties, and you will see, sure enough, all devices. So let's edit the assignment, remove that, add a group I know which my devices are in. Okay, select, review and save, click save. Okay, let's head back over to Tenant Enrollment. Okay, so there is some other prerequisites here. Now you will see these in the documentation, which I will link to the video, and what constitutes these as ready or not ready. But if I click Run Checks again, you'll now see I've got an advisory this time. Okay, so make sure that the update rings exclude Windows Autopatch devices. Okay, so this is just saying you've already got some update rings, once we configure the service, make sure you exclude your Autopatch devices from these rings. Now, this may be a thing that you look to consider when you first enroll if you want a steady rollout of Autopatch. Or you may just decide that you're going to get rid of all your rings and just go with Autopatch. I would advise not getting rid of all your rings and going Autopatch. I would definitely go through a phased approach of getting your devices into Autopatch until you're comfortable with the service, and then look to remove your rings thereafter. Okay. Also, there's some how to remediate information here on how you can fix this issue. Okay, so let's click back on the tenant enrollment, and you can see now that I am ready to start my enrollment. Let's go. So, click enroll. So the next step is to fix. So we've done step 3 in the guide, which is fixing all the issues with your tenant. Let's now start by enrolling the tenant. Okay, so again, read all the information on the screen. Click I give Microsoft permission to manage my AD organization. Okay, so one thing you need to do is provide your information. So let me just put my information here. I'll skip this part of the video for a second while I put my information in. Okay, once you've entered out both your admins, click complete. And then this service goes ahead and configures itself. As you can see here, it's going to take a few minutes. So what I'll do is I'll pause the video here and then we will reconvene in a moment. So now you can see Autopatch is complete. So if we click continue, and you can see now you have already enrolled into Autopatch. One thing we saw earlier during the enrollment of Autopatch for the tenant is the advisory about our Windows update rings and excluding modern management or Autopatch devices. So what I'd do is I would go over and edit the assignments, and if you just search modern and exclude all modern workplace devices all, click select and click save. I'd go away and do this for each of your policies that you have in place, including your feature update policies. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause here and reconvene once I've done that to save you watching me click around the Intune console. Okay, so now I've done all of my Windows update policies. Let's head back over to the Autopatch pane and have a look. So you can see at the moment I've got no devices at all in Autopatch, which you would expect considering we've just configured the enrollment. But if you notice here, there's a handy little tooltip which is to register more devices. Please add them to the Windows Autopatch device registration group, and it could take up to an hour for them to appear here. But you can try clicking the Discover devices to register them on demand. So let's head over to the group. And have a look at the members, and let's add a couple of members in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select a couple of my devices, and I'm also going to select a hybrid device of mine. Okay, let's wait for the devices to appear in the group. So now the devices are in the group, let's head back over to the Autopatch console and click Discover Devices. Okay, so let's wait for the sync to progress. So now that we've completed our registration, we've done the device discovery. You can see there's a couple of devices here, 2 sat in ready, which are now provisioned and enrolled in the service. And you can see which group they're in. So you can see that these are in the first group. Okay, I've got no devices that sit in not ready, and 1 device and 2 devices that sit in not registered. Now these not registered devices, this one is an old device that no longer has an Intune or Autopilot record. And this device here, so because it's a hybrid device, we have fallen into the trap of There's 2 devices in Azure AD. I added them both to the group for demonstration purposes. Now, if I click on here, you will see that this device must be managed by either Intune or co-management. Now, when you roll this out, you may decide to use a dynamic group that specifies what enrollment type it should have. But again, these are here just for demonstration purposes. So if we look deeper into this, you will see that it's obtaining the device serial number, what status it is, the last sign-in, enrollment, etc. Now, one of the things to also make note of is which group it's in. Okay, so the groups are calculated, and I will again put a link to the documentation in here. But the groups are calculated based on a company with less than 200 devices. Your first ring will be 5% of your estate, your fast ring will be 15%, and your broad ring will be the remaining 80%. Now, for any company over 200 seats, it will be your first group will be 1%, your fast group will be 9%, and the broad ring will be 90% of your estate. Again, I will be putting a link to the documentation in here. I don't want to just keep reiterating what it says in there, and it is definitely valuable to read that documentation as well. Okay, so let's go have a look at some of the groups that the Autopatch enrollment created. Well, if you search for modern workplace in your groups, you will see a gaggle of groups that's been created. So you'll see here you got your first, fast, broad, test rings. So you can see here these rings relate to what we spoke about previously about the percentage your estate's broken up to, and it might seem weird that they are assigned groups, but this is what Autopatch is managing in the back end. They're managing what devices are assigned to these groups. Now, you will see here again, you've got your modern workplace devices all. So inside there, you will have all of your devices, virtual machine, Windows 10, etc. Now, one thing you shouldn't do is you shouldn't move devices between these groups manually. If you head back over to the Autopatch console, select your device, device actions, assign device group, and it will give you an option of what group you want it to get. For example, this one, I think it could be a test device. So if I click save, what this will do now is this will go away, and in the background it's going to change the device ring. It won't be instant, so if you're like me and very impatient, you can try click the refresh button here. You can try look at the groups within Azure AD or inside of Intune, and you will see no progress. But if you check back in a little bit later on, you will notice that the device has flipped over to the test ring. So now let's look at some of the changes made to your tenant during your enrolment. Microsoft have provided a pretty in-depth guide to what is changed during enrolment, which is handy for people to know. So there's a web page here. Again, I will link this to the video. Now we spoke a little bit about the groups, but in here this gives you a breakdown, a description of what these groups are, and the dynamic queries that they are using. But just a little bit further down, you'll also notice it creates some device configuration profiles. Now, if I just show you these within Intune, you can see again, it's branded them with Modern Workplace, and there's a few extra policies here that will be deployed. Now, what I would advise doing is making sure that there is going to be no conflicts. And you can do that by assigning them to a device for your testing purposes, or you can review the documentation. I would advise doing the documentation first. If you do miss any, it will then be picked up by a conflict within the device configuration profiles. But take a steady read through this and see if any of these do conflict with your current policy sets. Again, it does the same with the update rings and also the feature update policies. And in fact, all the policies, they're all here and available for you to review. And then finally, what it does as well is it deploys a PowerShell script which installs the necessary components for the service. Again, I'm going to put a link to this in the video. Please take a read of it. It will be really worthwhile. Okay, so let's summarize the Autopatch service. So we went through the enrollment, which is really simple, easy to understand. It tells you what could be a problem, and it will also tell you how to remediate them. From there, it will create the groups, it will do the changes to the tenant that it requires. At that point, you then need to exclude the modern workplace devices all group from your current Windows Update for Business policies. You would then add a device to the group. Now, to add a little bit of extra flavour to this, Microsoft supports one level of nested group, so you can choose to have a dynamic group that you nest in there, but it can only be one level deep. It doesn't support nested within nested within nested. So start with a couple of devices, maybe your IT team, or maybe just a couple of virtual machines. And then it's really easy to scale up by adding in groups of devices. You will head over to Autopatch. You will discover devices if you're impatient and don't want to wait an hour. Autopatch will then dynamically assign them to rings it believes they should be in. And you can feel free to go in and change them via the Autopatch pane. And then you just let it do its work. It's as simple as that. Yeah, it's going to relieve a lot of overhead for especially smaller IT teams out there. Yeah, if you've enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe, and come back for more. Thank you.